Welcome to the Tekpub series on Mastering Silverlight. My name is Christopher Benage, and I will be your tour guide on this wonderful and magical journey into the world of Silverlight. In this series, we'll be starting with the very basics of Silverlight, so no prior knowledge of Silverlight on your part is expected. My goal here is to equip you, or perhaps rather to empower you with knowledge, so that you can build the Silverlight applications that you want. Now, we'll be covering a wide range of topics in this series. We're going to introduce the markup language known as XAML that allows us to easily build and lay out screens for Silverlight. We'll be discussing how to make the most out of Silverlight's very sophisticated data binding system. This is really an essential concept of leveraging the power of the platform. We're also going to discuss how to get your Silverlight application to communicate with other remote systems. Actually, we're going to cover a whole lot more than this. This is just the beginning, just the highlights. Now, while you don't need to know anything about Silverlight, I do assume that you're already familiar with Visual Studio and that you're comfortable with both C# and XML. Silverlight is a broad topic, and we can use it to build everything from line of business applications to games to whatever, you name it. We're going to start off, though, by focusing on core concepts. If you are building business applications, then what we're going to talk about is going to give you pretty much all you need to know. However, if you're building other types of applications, such as games or perhaps an app for the new Windows 7 phone, this will be a foundation you can build upon. I'd also like to add that while this series focuses on version 4 of Silverlight, the majority of the content is actually also applicable to version 3. Okay, let's start with the items control. There's a property in it called item source. Item source allows us to specify the collection data that we want the control to work with. In this case, we're going to say binding. Now, this little bit of XAML magic tells Silverlight that we want to bind the items control to whatever the data context is. Now, we also need to set bindings on the block of XAML that represents an individual tweet. You can see here we had tweet, author, and published on. So in order to do that, we use a very similar syntax, binding, but in this case, we're going to put the title of the property on the class that we're interested in. Okay, so we have title, author, and published. And those correspond to the properties on our tweet class. You can see title, author, and published. So let's run our application and see what it looks like. Right, the first thing to note is that it does not respect the design time width. Notice that our application is stretching to fill the entire browser. Let's go ahead and do a search. We'll type in Silverlight and click the Go button. And all right, we're getting results. Fantastic. Though another thing I notice here is that it's difficult to tell where one tweet ends and the next one begins. Let's go back and do a little more styling to see if we can make this easier to use. Ooh, I'm also noticing that the tweets are going off the edge, so we'll need to do some sort of text wrapping in addition to that. Okay, here we are back in the Visual Designer, and I'm realizing it would be much easier to make those changes we just talked about if I could actually see some tweets in the Visual Designer. Well, luckily for us, there's a way to do just that. So now we're back at the top of the XAML file, and I want to point out the d:" attributes. Again, this is part of the expression blend namespace. There's another one we can use called d:" data context. So this allows us to provide a data context at design time. Now we need something that looks like our real data context that can stand in for us during design time. Well, luckily for us, I have created just such a class called tweetList. TweetList inherits from list of tweet, and in its constructor, it constructs a few sample tweets. That's all we need. So now let's go back to the XAML, and we're going to use a markup extension as the value for this design time data context. So d:" data instance takes a type. In this case, we want to provide it the type of our tweet list. Now you'll notice that IntelliSense doesn't find our tweet list. That's because it doesn't know what namespace this lives in. It's unable to resolve the name. Now we can fix that by coming up here and adding our own custom namespace. We're going to call it local, meaning it is for our local application. And we're going to set it to my Twitter client. There are lots of ways to use attached properties, but the most common one is for the layout scenarios we just discussed. Now in XAML, attached properties are easy to spot. They always take the form of a class name dot and a property name equal to some value. So grid is the class, column is the property. Now we'll talk later about how to set these in code, as well as creating your own attached properties.